Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Licensing Subcommittee. I am Councillor Scott Pater-Harris. Right, let's go through. So today the subcommittee is meeting for the item regarding Danny Mark 2 Ludlow Road in Paulsgrove. And before we start, I'm just going to have to go through the appointment of chair. The legal advisor will call for nominations. Members will propose and second the nominations, and then we will appoint the chair afterwards. So,
any nominations?
That's unanimous. So I will chair today's proceedings. Just some housekeeping before we start, just for some safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. We will assemble you at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Please can everyone use their microphones and remember to switch them off when they're finished talking, otherwise the camera will remain on you. So it's just to press the red button below, it will come on, you'll see this little red light, then turn it off afterwards and the red light will go off, and you don't want to be on camera all the time. Okay. Members of the public are permitted to use both audio and visual recording devices during the public element of this hearing. Please note that only members and officers can be recorded at this hearing. Obviously, we're going to go to some introductions now. Obviously, I said I'm Councillor Scott Pater-Harris. I'm going to move round to my left.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kimberly Barrett, one of the councillors for Milton.
Hello everybody, my name's Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the council and I'll be advising the subcommittee today whilst they make their decision.
Good afternoon, Derek Stone, Principal Licensing Officer.
Good afternoon, PC. Peter James Vincent of Hampshire Police Licensing and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team.
Good afternoon, Colin Pollard, Licensing Officer with Hampshire Constabulary.
Afternoon, I'm John Walsgrove and I'm solicitor for Nanda, the premises licence holder, who's sat next to me, and the lady sat next to him is Tamsin, one of the people who wrote a letter of representation who wishes to speak.
And Councillor George Magic of the Paulsgrove Ward.
Councillor Linda Symes, East Dean Craneswater.
Thank you. Members, do we have any interest at all?
No.
No declarations there? Brilliant, we can move on. Okay, we will move on now to the application. So this is item 3 of our agenda, which is the review application for Danny Mark 2 Ludlow Road, Paulsgrove. The purpose of the report is for the committee to consider and determine a review application pursuant to section 52 of the Licensing Act 2003 in respect of the premises already described, and obviously the committee is asked to determine that matter. I'm going to hand over to our licensing officer to begin the proceedings, Mr. Derek Stone. Would you like to begin, Derek? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, members. As you've said, this hearing is to determine a review application submitted by Colin Pollard on behalf of the Chief Officer of Police in relation to Danny Mark 2 Ludlow Road, Paulsgrove. It relates to the prevention of crime and disorder and the protection of children from harm, and it centres around 2 occasions, one dating back to 2016, where the premises owner, who is the DPS and also the premises licence holder, has failed to provide CCTV footage. The 2016 incident relates to an investigation that the police were looking into where a stolen bank card or a credit card was used by someone who was a customer in the premises, and the second occasion following a reported assault on an 8-year-old child by a staff member at the premises. Members, I don't intend to go through these incidents as the police will address you shortly about this. There is nothing in this review that raises concerns directly with regard to the sale of alcohol from these premises, and Mr. Walsgrove will expand upon this when he addresses you shortly. Members, on receipt of this review, your licensing authority complied with the Act and prescribed regulations with regard to public notices at the premises, also at the civic offices, and all responsible authorities were notified. As a result, we received 19 support representations from either locals, customers and 1 staff member, which you all have seen and read in your bundle, seeking the retention of the premises licence authorisation. And you've heard that Tamsin Grattan is here, who made one of those representations to address you today. Members, there was one rep from Mrs. Nicole Harper against the licence, or the premises keeping its licence. I did forward to Ms Harper yesterday the correspondence we received from Mr Walsgrove's representation, seeking her view before today's hearing, but I've had no response. And you also will note, obviously, that Councillor Madrick is here to address you shortly as well. Members, you have several options available to you today, and you will have seen the recommendation from Mr Walsgrove that this matter is suitable to be dealt with by way of a warning. The other options today will be to modify the conditions of the premises licence, exclude a licensable activity, remove the DPS from the premises licence, but the police have already highlighted their concerns around that, because he's actually the owner. You could suspend the premises licence for a period of 3 months, or you could revoke the premises licence. Mr Walsgrove will assert to you that Nanda is a responsible licence holder and that he does work in partnership with the police, and that it would be wholly unreasonable and disproportionate to revoke the premises licence, and that a warning on this occasion is more than sufficient. Members, I don't think I need to say any more, but obviously I'll be here throughout the proceedings to assist where I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. That was very, very good. Do we have any questions, members? Are you struggling to see, Colin? We will get the curtains pulled. Apologies. Apologies for the viewers at home. Do we have any questions, though, members, for the licensing officer? We'll move on, because we can. Obviously, the applicant for this review is the police. Do you have any questions of the licensing officer at all?
No, none.
No questions. Okay, thank you. Obviously, out of the interested parties here today, I'm going to go for Tamsin. Do you have any questions for the licensing officer at all?
No.
No. And Councillor Madrick at the back, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr Walsgrove, do you have?
Thank you, Chair.
No. Very easily done. I'm going to hand over now to the responsible, the applicant, which is the police. Would you like to please open your proceedings? PC Pollard, thank you.
Thank you very much. Just for the avoidance of doubt, not PC, member of police staff. That's all right. So police have called this review of the premises licence pertaining to Danny Mart at 2 Ludlow Road in Portsmouth. This is in response to the premises licence holder and DPS, who are one in the same, Mr Vayana Perumal, breaching his premises licence conditions, failing to promote the licensing objectives, and the loss of confidence in him to operate compliantly and lawfully in the future. The relevant sections of the CCTV conditions which have been breached relate to storage capacity for 31 days of footage, allowing police access to data from the systems quickly and easily, ensuring that staff are trained in the use of the CCTV in order to supply that footage, and ensuring there is always somebody on the premises capable of operating the CCTV for that need. Please note there's no requirement for urgency to be conveyed when a request is made to access this CCTV data, and please also note the requirement for the licence holder to provide access quickly and easily. In 2016, officers investigating a fraud offence whereby a customer had used a stolen method of payment in the store contacted PC Rackham on the licensing team to express their frustration following multiple failed attempts to access and secure important CCTV evidence. The details relating to the officer's requests are included in Annex A of the police bundle and highlight multiple breaches of the CCTV conditions. In order to eventually obtain access to this evidence, it was necessary for the police licensing officer to spell out the licence holder's lawful responsibilities under the Licensing Act, and then threaten the use of enforcement action by prosecution, licence review, or both. More recently, on the 12th of July this year, the father of an 8-year-old girl reported to police that she had attended Danny Mart with her 12-year-old friend to buy some sweets. On returning home, she was upset and disclosed that a female member of staff had grabbed her by the arm, pushed her against a stand in an attempt to take a photograph or film her. The child told the member of staff to get off and left the shop with her friend. She did not receive any lasting injuries. It was also disclosed that the same child had attended the shop the previous day and had been photographed by the same member of staff. This recent incident has taken place on licensed premises, involves a member of staff on duty, and it involves a child. It took place during the time of permitted licensable activity. I do not feel it necessary for the actual sale of alcohol to have taken place at the same time as this incident for the subcommittee to identify the link to the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and the protection of children from harm. If you require a direct link for your decision making later on to the whole review presentation, then please consider that every sale of alcohol made since 2021 will have constituted a Section 136 offence under the Act due to the non-compliance with the premises licence conditions and the licensable activity of the sale of alcohol continuing to take place. Following the report on the 12th of July, a task was allocated to PCSO Rebecca Hambrook to speak with the girl in the first instance and then attend Danny Mart to view CCTV to ascertain what had happened and identify the member of staff. PCSO Hambrook attended the store on multiple occasions as detailed in Annex B of the police bundle. The staff member present could not provide access to the CCTV on any of these occasions, and the licence holder remained unreachable until called from the staff member's phone on the 28th of July. On the 28th of July, 16 days after the reported incident, PCSO Hambrook spoke with the licence holder for the first time. During this call, he said he didn't think the footage would go back that far, but he would check. So he didn't think after 16 days that his CCTV would go back that far. And I'm interested to know why and what reason there might be for somebody to think that, other than already having the knowledge it's not recording for 31 days. The only conclusion I can draw, and I urge the committee to do the same, is that the licence holder already knew his CCTV was not recording for 31 days, and he didn't care to put it right despite his lawful responsibility to do so. It had been recording for just 14 days since 2021. In that time, he has provided CCTV to police in other matters, so how could he not have known? I'm concerned that the licence holder's account of when he discovered the fault with the CCTV on checking, which followed the conversation on the 28th of July, is not truthful. If that is the case, then he's lied to police, he's lied to his representative, and he's lying to this committee. Following the call on the 28th of July, there was no answer for the next few attempts to contact the licence holder to confirm the status of the CCTV, and the staff member was still unable to provide access to police. So on the 8th of August, PCSO Hambrook made contact using her colleague's mobile phone from the shop following another unsuccessful attempt. This time she describes the licence holder as becoming quite angry, as he said that police never help him and only ever come to him when they need help. She further reports he became agitated during the call. When asked to identify the female member of staff, he said she had now left the job, and when asked her name, he responded that he did not know and would have to find out and call back, and he abruptly ended that call. As in 2016, the frustration of the investigating officers who are unable to access CCTV at Danny Mart was raised to PC Rackham of the licensing team. It had been 3 days since the licence holder said he would call back with the name and contact details of the member of staff, and no call had yet been received. PC Rackham contacted the licence holder on the 11th of August, and his statement is in the police bundle under Annex D. During this call, the licence holder said that when he had issues previously, the police had never helped him, so why should he help the police? So PC Rackham explained the reason for the request for CCTV, that it related to an assault on a child and that it implicated a staff member. The licence holder's response was to reiterate his stance that police never help him, so why should he help police? He does not apologise or explain that these are simply words of frustration. He emphasises his point of not wishing to help police, which is further evidenced by his previous comments and demeanour when dealing with both PC Rackham and PCSO Hambrook. These are clearly not just words of frustration. As in 2016, PC Rackham explains the licence holder's lawful responsibilities under the Act. He also explains the CCTV conditions on his premises licence. Again, it is only after this call that the licence holder bothers to call PCSO Hambrook to provide the details of the staff member. Since 2016, the licence holder has assisted police with CCTV inquiries on a number of occasions. On these occasions, however, there was no benefit to him by not providing. The incident on the 12th of July implicated a member of his staff, his licensed premises, and it involved a child, all of which could impact the status of his premises licence. Following the submission of the review and during correspondence with the licence holder's representative, it was said to police that the girl on the 12th of July, the incident on the 12th of July, was related to a shoplifting and that the 8-year-old girl had lied. Eventually, it was understood that this was not the case and an apology for saying this about the girl was made. But I do not understand why in the licence holder's mind that his lawful obligations to promote objectives and comply with his conditions would only apply to the one incident and not also to that of an incident of shoplifting. With regards to the licence holder's initial belief that the incident in question was related to that shoplifting, I would like to add that it's not always appropriate to include all of the details for a CCTV request, particularly when the person who holds that evidence could have a reason not to provide it, such as when it might incriminate them or a person who they know. I cannot see any information in PC Rackham's statement where he has clarified the incident involving a child he is referring to, other than that on the 12th of the 7th. I can only assume the police hadn't had any other reports of an assault on a child, and PC Rackham wasn't aware of the need to clarify which one. I visited Danny Mart on the 3rd of November following a meeting with the licence holder and his representative. And during this visit, I assessed the new CCTV system to check it would record for a minimum of 31 days. The footage held at the time only went back to the 11th of October, which was the installation date, but there was sufficient storage capacity to satisfy me that it would hold a minimum of 31 days moving forwards. So we've been led to believe that on or around the 28th of July, when the licence holder allegedly checked his CCTV and discovered for the first time it was only recording for 14 days, that he had taken this breach seriously and taken immediate steps to rectify the situation. However, this doesn't appear to be the case. The CCTV breach was not rectified in July. It was not rectified in August when the licence holder spoke with PC Rackham and confirmed there was no footage of the incident. It was finally rectified more than 2 months later on the 11th of October, which coincidentally was 6 days after police had submitted a review request with a recommendation for his premises licence to be revoked. Had we not started these proceedings, this breach would not have been addressed. With regards to proportionality and the police recommendation for revocation, I've read Mr. Walsgrave's representation. I did say that if the concerns from police were solely related to the CCTV system recording too few days, then it would not be a reason to revoke the premises licence. However, this matter is not solely related to this, and at no point did I rule it out as part of the reason for this review. If a licence holder is no longer prepared to help police when crime is reported to have occurred on their licensed premises, or to help police when a member of their staff is a suspect in a crime, then I pose the questions: how can they uphold the prevention of the crime and disorder objective moving forwards, and how can any authority engage with them to achieve any necessary improvements before considering enforcement action? The licence holder has breached his CCTV conditions consistently over a lengthy period of time. He has failed to uphold the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder by not assisting police with investigations related to his licensed premises. He has only assisted police or taken steps to rectify his breaches after a threat of enforcement in 2016, and now with the need for a full review to be called. The licence holder has not been truthful about his knowledge of the CCTV system not recording for 31 days, and further, he's not been truthful about taking the CCTV breaches seriously and rectifying it once he discovered the breach, because that didn't happen until more than 2 months later and only after we'd submitted this review. The licence holder says his comments about not helping police were simply words of frustration, and that he has indeed sent an apology to both PC Rackham and PCSO Hambrook. He was not so sorry as to submit such an apology prior to the police call for review and retaining legal representation. Given the lack of confidence police have in the licence holder to perform his duties as licence holder and DPS, police believe it is appropriate and proportionate to revoke the licence pertaining to Danny Martin, Ludlow Road. He has 2 licensed stores within Portsmouth, and there is currently no plan to look at his involvement with the second, with the hope that whatever decision you make today will ensure his compliance with the Licensing Act moving forwards and ensure he is promoting the licensing objectives. Whilst Mr. Walsgrave is requesting a simple warning be given to his client, police do not consider this will effectively deal with the problem long term. The licence holder has been warned in 2016 by PC Rackham, and this time he has required the seriousness of a review to be called to take any necessary and appropriate steps. It cannot remain the case that police have to threaten or call a review of this premises licence to force the licence holder to comply with his conditions and maintain his promotion of the licensing objectives. So I ask you, please consider revocation in the first instance. However, should you be persuaded otherwise, please consider removal of the DPS with a 3-month suspension to allow another personal licence holder to be trained or employed within the business, along with a warning from the committee that any further breaches or failings brought to your attention will be dealt with robustly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. PC Vince, do you have anything you want to add? Not at this time.
Apologies, no, not at this point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Symes.
2016 was one incident, 2022 was the second, and in between there was only contact if there was a problem in the shop that the owner wanted you to deal with. Is that correct? Have I got that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett, do you have any questions? I have some questions, which I'm sure won't shock you. I'm just going to go back to the appendix. I think it's Appendix B, which would be the license, the actual license. Yeah, Appendix B. So you go to Annex 2. It's about the conditions consistent with the operating schedule, just so we can get some clarity. Obviously, it says operation and storage is point 1. And it says a record will be kept of any access made to the information held on the system. Was this record made available?
Sorry, would you mind just repeating the question? I was just looking for the document.
It's fine. It's just if we go down to, I think it is the third line, sorry, which is a record will be kept of any access made to information held on the system relating to the CCG system in the license. Was that made available to yourself?
No, it was not.
No. Okay. The system will be regularly maintained and serviced. Would you believe that has been done?
I believe it's been done now, but I've not seen anything to show me that it was being done prior to this.
There was no record kept?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move down again, it's on the same page. Digital systems will have sufficient storage capacity for 31 days and good quality pictures. It does say tape should be replaced after 12 usages. I don't think we use tapes anymore. I think you've made a reference to that. So would you believe now that the system that is now installed has capacity for 31 days? I did get that correct.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Let's move on further down. It's important the police are able to access data from the systems quickly and easily, and therefore provision we made for someone to have access to the secured area and be available to operate the equipment. It's very wordy. I don't know who wrote these licenses back then. So you're saying that at that time, and from the papers that we've read, that there was nobody on the premises that could access it apart from Nanda?
That was part of the problem we were facing, yes.
So that is another breach of the license,
Yes.
effectively, that nobody on site had the capacity to operate the system.
Correct.
Also, was all operators will receive training from the installer when equipment is installed, and this training will be cascaded down to members of staff? I'm guessing from the review point that that hasn't happened. Can you confirm?
I can confirm.
Thank you. A simple operator's manual will be available to assist in replaying and exporting data, particularly important with digital systems. Was there an operator's manual?
There isn't an operator's manual that was presented at the times the police attended to look at the CCTV. My understanding is that the new system that's in there now has an operating manual.
Thank you. There's something else I want to ask Colin, but I can't find it. That's basically on the CCTV system. So it's not just the fact that the system doesn't record for 31 days. It's more so the fact the system isn't available. The staff have no training on the system, and the police couldn't access the system. Am I correct in that?
Yes, that's correct.
And coupled with the fact that there's an ongoing investigation and the 2 licensing objectives, prevention of crime and disorder, along with protection of children from harm, is the basis of the review.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions that I want to ask. Members, do we have anything we'd want to ask? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to some interested parties if they have any questions. I'm going to go for yourself first, Tamsin, because Councillor Madrick is a member and he can wait. So, do you have any questions of the officers today? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Madrick, do you have any questions of the officers?
Only one for a point of clarification, Chair, if possible. Is in relation to the accusation in relation to the assault of a minor, what's the outcome? Is it ongoing investigation? Was there any proof? What happened? What was the outcome?
No, the officers attending, or the officers who were charged with looking at the investigation, needed the CCTV evidence to be able to prove what had actually happened at the time. The case was stalled, is the best way I can put it. It hasn't been filed yet, which is when it would ultimately close. But at the point that we started these proceedings, it was certainly not ongoing at that time. I've since been able to provide some additional information to the officers. So I think at this point we can say it's ongoing, but whether or not they're going to follow up due to the lack of evidence they're aware of being, I'm not sure at this time.
Thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Madrick? No. Mr. Walsgrove, would you like to ask any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pollard, in relation to the questions from the Chair regarding the record being kept of access to information, that's never been asked for, has it, by the police?
No.
So your response to say that it wasn't available isn't correct, is it? because there is a record, there always has been a record. I've got records of when requests have been made, which were supplied by my client. It's a simple fact, you never asked to see it.
When I attended on the 3rd of November and conducted a licensing visit to check the CCTV primarily, I also went through the rest of the conditions with the licence holder, and I was not shown a document that showed the history.
Didn't ask for it. In relation to the ongoing investigation, it's correct, isn't it, that the police were informed of the full details of the member of staff on the 11th of August, and your colleagues have done nothing since the 11th of August, and that further information was provided to you specifically on the 4th of November with a recommendation for me for at least a conversation with that member of staff, given what, which I don't intend to go into here, but what information was departed to me, which I departed to you, yet you're saying no one has spoken to that member of staff yet. Is that right?
PCSO Hambrook attempted to make contact with the staff member via the details supplied on the 11th of August and was unable to get hold of her. Since then, I have passed on all of the information which you passed to me.
In relation to the capacity of the system to record for 31 days, you attended the premises and saw the new system. Do you recall me advising you in the meeting before you attended the shop that the new system would record from the date of its installation, but the previous system had the days prior to the date that you mentioned? Because you've asserted before this committee that when you visited there wasn't 31 days footage available, but in fact I had assured you that there was, and in fact there still is that footage for you to view if you wanted to see it. I'm just wondering why you were so sure.
I'm just going to jump in on that. I think it was quite an open answer. He did say actually that there are the capacity for it, and it was from the day of installation, hence why he couldn't say it was 31 days. But I do believe from the answer given, there was an agreement that it does have the capacity for 31 days. So I don't think the question is relevant. It's been asserted that it is 31 days.
No. I think you've missed the point of the question.
No, I know the point of the question, Mr. Walsgrove.
Well, his assertion was... No,
I'm sharing the meeting, come on. You know the rules here, John.
No, this is absolutely crucial.
It is not crucial, because the question's already been answered, and I've given you the reason of validity. I'm satisfied that it does go for 31 days, and I'm satisfied that you've got the previous days of footage. I don't think you need to go forward. I'm satisfied with that.
Well, I do need to go forward because the assertion by the police was that he only took action to ensure his CCTV recorded for 31 days when the new system was upgraded, and that isn't true. He took immediate action back in July. His system was capable of recording to 31 days. It had only been set to 14 days to ensure the highest quality of images. And when he realised that it was only recording for 14 days at that stage when the police had asked for it, he switched it so that it could record for 31 days. It had been recording for 31 days from July. It was then upgraded, and that new system has 31 days footage. So he has the footage on the old system still stored, and that information was departed to Mr. Pollard at the meeting, and he's asserted that he did absolutely nothing to rectify the CCTV until the upgrade. That isn't true, and that is a key point for this committee to consider in terms of what actions the licence holder took in response to the discovery that his system at the time was only recovering 14 days of footage. He asserted that very clearly. I made a note of it because I couldn't believe, after having explained very carefully in the meeting we had, and then he visited the shop and we told him he could see the footage from the previous days on the old system, that he asserted today that nothing had been done until then, until the upgrade. And that isn't true.
Okay, well, do you want to answer that? Because, I mean, I thought it was quite a clear answer, but
I'm happy to respond. We did have a conversation when we met on the 3rd of November. It was explained to me about the previous system being there. So when I made my comments initially about the 31 days of the new system not being present, I wasn't concerned about the missing 5 or 6 days at one end because I could see it still had capacity moving forwards.
So do you accept that my client changed his CCTV back in July to the 31-day recording?
I haven't seen that.
No, but you asserted that it had only recorded 31 days since he's had his upgrade. But you accept that you can't assert that, can you? Because you don't know.
Well, I haven't checked the other systems, so I do not know between July and October.
No, thank you. I think that's enough on that line of questioning. Thank you. Can we move on, please,
No,
Mr.
I'll leave it
Walsgrove?
there then, Chair.
You sure? Thank you. I'm going to hand over to the interested parties, which is yourself, Tamsin, if you have anything that you wish to say about the application today. You have as much time as you like, if you want to say anything.
Not really sure what to say, to be honest. Well, I've worked there for about the licensing or task questions, sorry. No, not really.
This is your
Yeah.
opportunity to make a statement.
Yeah.
It's not to ask anyone questions.
No.
It's any information you want to give the committee.
Any information you feel is relevant to today's proceedings, we're happy to listen.
I will say, so many of the customers who I serve from 7:30 till 2, weekdays, they all show so much support for Danny himself and also for the shop. There was many who didn't have emails to write in, and so, but they all wished their best wishes, and yeah, like they'd be so sad to see.
Never came in the morning.
No, yeah, I was unaware of that. But yeah, that's what I'd like to say, really.
That's fine, thank you for that. Just turn your microphone off, because otherwise you are on camera. Councillor Madrick, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair. So obviously, as a councillor of Paulsgrove, like all us councillors here, we get inundated with emails from different people about different things on different occasions. And I've got kind of like a devil's advocate on both sides on this incident. First of all, for the knowledge of the committee present, I think it's important to give a bit of information about where the shop is and its importance to the community. So Paulsgrove, as you probably know, is an incredibly hilly area. It's an incredibly difficult area to get up and down in, especially if you're elderly or got any disabilities. Where the Danny Mart is situated is right smack bang in the middle of a large residential area where there is no alternative shops or local convenience stores. So the convenience store itself is nothing short of vital to the local community and the local people. And without it, it would be a significant loss. It really would be a detrimental loss. Because, as I say, where it's situated is literally on the hill, so people higher up would have to walk the whole way down to Alloway Avenue and then walk the whole way back up, and it's simply not easy. So the convenience store is really important. As I say, you've got the situation here where from well, certainly my opinion that a number of the licensing objectives have been breached, and I don't think too many of those points are being argued, and I think that there definitely has been a breach of 2 of the 4 licensing objectives, and I think that's obvious. However, I am quite impressed with the response from Nanda. He did reach out to me a couple of weeks ago via email. He did want to meet up and speak about the incident. Unfortunately, we haven't had time to meet in that last 2 weeks, but we're intending to chat after this, maybe stay or some other day, and work together moving forwards. He's been really responsive in that regard. I think also you've got to understand of the community in Paulsgrove. It's a really close-knit, really tight community, but it's not without its problems. And I'm fully aware that Nanda has had a lot of issues there with petty crime, small theft, and it can be very frustrating as a business owner because the police don't do anything to help or come out on a number of the incidents, the smaller incidents, the less serious ones. So I too completely understand his frustration. So this is why I'm playing a bit of a devil's advocate, because I completely understand from his side where he's saying he's frustrated and annoyed because there is a severe lack of support for small businesses, especially when it informs petty crime and bits and pieces which he's been subjected to. But equally on the other side of the fence, that doesn't condone or make breaking the licensing objectives, that's not a reason to break those, or not meet those. However, as I say, there's clearly been CCTV put in place. It's clearly working for the 31 days as requested. So I'd say those things have been satisfied. There is no obviously crime that's taken place that's actually proven in court in relation to the assault of a minor, because it's not gone through and it looks like they haven't got the evidence to go through with it. So it's a very difficult one. So as I say, I'm not neither for nor against, but I would say I would like the committee to understand how important this store is to the local community. It really is vital, and revoking the licence would be terrible. It really would be terrible. So I would really urge you, if possible, not to revoke the licence. But equally, I do think that, you know, I'm a man of the law, and I do think that obviously there has been a clear breach of the licence objectives. So it shouldn't go unheard. But I would urge the committee, if possible, not to revoke it because of the community importance of the licence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magic. Do we have any questions, members? No? I just have one question, George, regarding the representation. So it says, that being said, you've asked for the committee to carefully consider the message sent to other traders in the city. Should the review not have consequences for providing the responsible authorities key CCTV evidence to support the prevention of harm under the promotion of the licence objectives? I'm just going to play devil's advocate, as I'm going to use the term that you've used. What do you think the committee should be doing?
It's difficult, isn't it? You've got to send a message, in my opinion. If you're asking me as chair, what is your opinion on what you should do? If that is the blunt question, which obviously I have no impact or no choice or no say on this matter in any capacity, I would probably look at removing the DPS. The business could still trade, it could still operate under a new DPS name. I think, as I say, there's been a clear breach of the licensing objectives. There's been 7 that you've mentioned, Chair, in consideration. There's been 2 clear breaches out of the 4 in protection of children against harm, protection of crime and disorder. These have been breached. I can't see any way of notifying that. But as I say, I do think that they've been satisfied now. But there seems to have been a lot of problems between. So I do think there should be a clear message. I don't want the business to close. I don't want the licence to be revoked. I want the business to carry on trading. I want it to be supplying the community. A removal of DPS would send a very clear message, but it would not stop the business trading in any capacity.
Thank you for that, Councillor Magic. I know you mentioned about the location of the business, and that is obviously in your deputation about your representation regarding the part it plays in the community. If I'm correct, and just indulge me for a second, is this the one that as you go right up the hill, it's literally standing alone on the corner of it's Ludlow Road, isn't it?
Yes. So there's some people get confused between the one that's in just within the Cosham ward as well. There's 2. There's one right up the Cosham by like Meadow Sweet Way, that kind of area, which is in the border of Cosham and Paulsgrove. And then Nanda's one, the Danny Mart, is just off Ludlow. But it's in in a really important area. It's in the middle of going up the hill and down the hill. So it's in a really crucial area for lots of disabled and elderly people that rely on it.
No, I know exactly where it is now. I was trying to visualise it in my head, but yeah, I know exactly where it is. Thank you for that. Do the applicants have any questions based on the representation? No. Mr. Walsgrove, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
None at all? Okay. Mr. Walsgrove, it's your time to make a statement.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I've put in some written submissions on behalf of Nanda and would ask that, I know you've read them before we started, but obviously when you retire to make your decision, I would ask you to reread those. There is a lot of information contained within it, setting out our account of what happened, and I do need to pick up on a few points arising from that written statement and also things that have been said today. I think most importantly, Nanda does want to repeat the apology that he's given. You heard Councillor Madgwick just say he could understand his frustration that whenever Nanda has assisted the police, it hasn't resulted in any action being taken against anyone. And actually, it's not an unreasonable view to have. What I will say is that on the telephone conversation with PC Rackham on the 11th of August, Nanda did apologise for what he'd said in the telephone call. When I raised that with Mr Pollard at the meeting we had subsequently, his response was that, well, as PC Rackham hadn't detailed that in his statement, it couldn't have happened. Well, I'm telling you that Nanda said it did happen. He did apologise. He realised that he was expressing his frustration and needed to help, and obviously that's what he did. He confirmed to PC Rackham that his system had only been recording for 14 days at that point, and that he had the details of the member of staff and would immediately pass those on, which he actually did. The most important apology, of course, is to the parents of the child on the alleged assault, that Nanda wasn't able to provide the CCTV to the police. And that wasn't, as is stated by the police, a refusal to give that CCTV, because, as you've read, his system at the time was only recording for 14 days, and he only became aware of the incident 16 days later, by which time he couldn't possibly produce the CCTV. So it wasn't him being deliberately obstructive, it wasn't him refusing, he simply couldn't produce that CCTV. I've said in the written representations what you as a committee need to do, because this is the way you're directed by the Section 182 guidance, is to find what the cause of the review is, and I've set out at paragraphs 4 to 7 what I believe and would respectfully submit is the cause of the review. And I think you've heard from the police today, it's this lack of confidence that Nanda would promote the licensing objectives in the future and would work in partnership with the police to promote those licensing objectives. I'd ask you to attach weight to the fact that Nanda is a responsible premises licence holder. He has had 2 shops in the Portsmouth area, both licensed in his name and him as DPS, for over a decade at each shop, so effectively 20 years of operating licensed premises in your area. We've set out numerous examples of when he has assisted the police, not just giving CCTV in relation to allegations of crime and disorder, but also he's been involved with the drugs unit in assisting them in an investigation. And that, and as it said in the written representations, they carried out surveillance from his home address in that regard. So not as as Mr. Pollard would have you believe, the only time he ever gives CCTV is when it's benefiting him in terms of a theft or burglary at the shop. He is willing to work in partnership, has done in the past, will do so in the future. The assertion that the CCTV hasn't been operating and did nothing about it, I know you stopped me asking questions about that, but the evidence is quite clear that when he realised the CCTV was not recording for 31 days, he had it reset. So that system did have the capacity to record for 31 days, and that does comply with the condition. And I know as a committee you're not going to like the fact that I'm arguing that the condition only requires it to have a capacity, because you would be saying, well, that surely does mean that it must record for 31 days. Well, that's not what the condition says. It just says it must have capacity. However, Nanda has taken responsibility, and you've seen in the written representations that he accepts that it should have been recording for 31 days. It certainly had done previously before he had it upgraded in early 2021. And that upgrade itself surely must show to you that he is a responsible licence holder, investing more money in CCTV so that it can provide better quality images. Obviously, as a technology has advanced, the CCTV becomes better quality, and indeed the latest upgrade he's got has noise recording as well as video recording, so he's able to record everything that's said in the shop, and it's linked to his mobile phone, so he has got direct input into the cameras on a live basis, which provides instant access and can provide instant access to the police to view that CCTV. So not only did he upgrade it in 2021, completely voluntarily, just to ensure he had the best quality CCTV. He then upgraded it again to ensure that it had a much bigger memory storage than the 31 days, whilst maintaining the highest degree of picture quality. As I said, he actually flipped over the existing system to 31 days back in July, but he wasn't happy with the images that were being recorded. He had, as you've seen from the representations, provided CCTV evidence to the police on a couple of occasions after that, but decided that the quality had to be improved. Not only that, once he then received the review, he upgraded it again. He's actually had a second system of CCTV installed, so that if one fails, he's actually got another system working independently which will carry on recording. So he's now got two CCTV systems in what is a small convenience store. The cameras cover everywhere. As I said, it's noise recording. It's a substantial investment in CCTV, and as I said, that does not show to me that this is an irresponsible licence holder who's not prepared to do what it takes. I've also set out in the representations other steps he took which might assist in the future, in that he has had business cards prepared for his staff, so that if any responsible authority attend the premises, they will be able to give that person a card with his contact details on, even though those contact details are on the licence, and the PCSO, once they'd received the report, could easily have emailed him and said, can I have the CCTV, as have many other officers in the past, where they send him the email with a link of where to upload the CCTV. That's the usual way in which the police request it, and that's always the way he has provided it. Access to that system was never asked for, so you will have read that on the first few visits from the police officer, obviously just turning up unannounced, hadn't arranged to meet Nanda at the premises. It would have been easy to either email, try to contact him by telephone to arrange a meeting, but just decided to turn up at the shop. Obviously Nanda's got those two businesses. He's not going to be working in the shop all hours. I have to say, in my professional career, I've never turned up to expecting to meet someone without having pre-arranged it. Clearly, I'm not making a criticism of the officer. They can proceed with their investigation in any way they wish. However, we wouldn't be here on a licence review if that officer had followed all the previous procedure her colleagues had done in emailing the request and asking him to upload the link, because it would have been immediately after the report of the offence, and that CCTV would have been available. I am incredibly surprised that they have not chosen to speak to the member of staff who it is alleged has assaulted the girl. It is a serious incident. It's one which Nanda only became aware of fully in terms of the allegation when he received the review papers. Previously, the PCSO had only informed him it was an incident involving a member of his staff, and then PC Rackham on the 11th of August told him it was an incident where it was alleged a member of staff had assaulted the child. I have interviewed that member of staff myself, and from the review papers from my interview, that person is no longer working at the premises and certainly won't be re-employed there. I accept entirely the comment from Mr. Pollard that it's not always right to disclose the full circumstances to Nanda of why CCTV is required, and I'm certainly not suggesting to you that carries much favour in his argument that you should not revoke the licence. But I think it's right that this committee should have a full appreciation of the facts, and more importantly because there has been, following an article in the news and also social media posts, there has been quite a backlash against Nanda personally. And regrettably, a lot of people identified that member of staff as being his daughter, which of course it isn't his daughter. And so I think it's important to set the record straight in terms of what his knowledge was about that incident and how he acted in relation to it. He has, in my respectful submission, acted promptly at the points where information has been given to him in an entirely appropriate fashion. What he should not have done is expressed his frustration about previous action the police had done, but as I say, I believe that to be entirely understandable. I'm glad Councillor Madgwick is of the same view, and I would ask you, with respect to excuse his agitation and his comments made to the police on those two occasions. He knows it's wrong, and he has written through me apologies to both those officers. He knows, yes, he was frustrated, he should not have made those comments. But when he did make those comments, it was not to try and obstruct any investigation. As I said, he was more than willing to help, not only in this investigation, but also previous ones, and of course any future ones, no matter what decision you make this afternoon. Just in relation to outcomes, you've heard from the police, obviously they want the premises licence to be revoked. You know that there has been a lot of support in the community from the letters of representations and how much this shop is valued by local people, and indeed Councillor Madgwick has alerted you to that fact. In relation to the shop, if you revoke the licence, it will almost certainly lead to the failure of the business. So in convenience retailing, there are core products which need to be available to have a convenient shop. And whilst alcohol doesn't make up a significant part of the overall income of this shop, the fact that people can shop under one roof and get everything they need, including, if they choose to, alcohol, if that wasn't available, they may well choose to shop elsewhere, because if they choose to buy alcohol, they're going to want to buy that from somewhere. If they go somewhere else, they will do their entire shop somewhere else. So it's not just loss of alcohol sales if you revoke the licence. The knock-on effect is a significant number of customers will be forced to shop somewhere else because they'll do all their shopping somewhere else. I'm sure you can appreciate a little local convenience store, corner shop, the profit margins are relatively tight. And if you take away the alcohol sales coupled with that basket shop from those customers who choose to shop and do their shop under one roof, the business cannot possibly succeed. That will lead to job losses. And in fact, you've got Tamsin here who works at the shop and has done for a number of years. But more importantly, it means that shop won't be able to serve the local community. Now, I accept you've got to be sure, therefore, that NANDA is going to promote the licensing objectives in the future and is going to cooperate with the police. I don't agree with the suggestion that removing the DPS is going to achieve that, because NANDA is the premises licence holder. He owns the business and he's currently named as the designated premises supervisor. Now, I want to put the case to you that you can have confidence in him to promote the licensing objectives because of his past conduct, because of his investment in the CCTV, because of his response to the investigation and subsequently the review proceedings. And that should be, in my respectful submission, enough credible evidence to show he is a man that can be trusted and one in which you can put your faith that if you allow this licence to continue, those issues which have arisen in this case would certainly not arise again. Now, in my written submission, I suggested that a warning to him would be appropriate as to his future conduct in his conversations with the police and promotion of the licensing objectives. In fact, I would ask you to modify the condition on the premises licence in relation to the CCTV. The one on the licence is one which I think is over a decade old, and it's one which Portsmouth Police used to request back in the day when perhaps it was a little uncertain as to how conditions would be interpreted. And I would invite you to impose a more modern clear and enforceable condition which this committee and the police request on new applications in the Portsmouth area. I'll read it out to you because it's on a document, but then I can hand it in so that you've got it before you. So the condition I would ask you to impose would be to remove condition 1 from the current licence in its entirety and replace it with the following: a suitable and sufficient digital CCTV camera system linked to a suitable recording facility which captures images of evidential quality shall, so far as reasonably practicable, be operational at the premises during any period in which licensable activities are permitted. CCTV recordings and footage will be retained for a minimum of 31 days and be made available for review by the police or a duly authorised officer of the local authority upon request, subject to the requirements of the data protection legislation in force at that time. That, I would say, is a much more suitable condition. On the current condition, there's actually no requirement for him to produce CCTV. The only requirement is to allow the police access to the system. And in that regard, I would just like to make that the police never made a request for access to the system. So the PCSO, on her numerous visits to the shop where she hadn't met Nando, could have asked a member of staff for access to the system. There were instructions which she could have followed to access it. And indeed, when she spoke to Nanda, she could have asked him for access to the system immediately on that telephone conversation. She would have been able to get access to it, but no request was ever made. I think it's an outdated condition. It doesn't work. You need one which you and the police can have a greater reliance on, where it's clear you have to produce it. If you're asked for it, you have to produce it. It's not about access to a system, and that it must be recording for 31 days. So, as I said, I do ask you to reread the written representations carefully. Consider what is the most appropriate and proportionate response to the cause of the review, which the police identify as a lack of confidence, where I say the contrary. You can have confidence. Impose that condition. Do not revoke the licence. A suspension is not necessary, and certainly a suspension to vary the designated premises supervisor for 3 months doesn't make sense whatsoever. A DPS application is valid the day that it's submitted. It wouldn't take 3 months to have another licence holder be named as the DPS. It could be done within 24 hours. So to suggest that you need to suspend it for 3 months for that reason, frankly, is nonsense. So in all the circumstances, I would ask you to issue a warning, impose the condition, and allow Nanda to continue to be an asset to this community. And obviously I'm happy to answer any questions about anything I've said or any of the representations that I've submitted on his behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Barrett?
Yeah, just for clarity, for my peace of mind, obviously I've got in Annex B from the police sort of the timescales of when they've tried to contact the shop and everybody, and I've heard what you've said today. I was just wondering if you could clarify, just for my peace of mind, that when you realised that the CCTV wasn't 31 days, it was 14, and when the police, maybe the police would like to say, but when the police were then made aware of that situation, that it wasn't 14 days, it wasn't 31 days, it's actually 14. I don't know whether you could clarify the dates at all.
So I think the telephone conversation with the PCSO was late July, the 28th, it's in her notes, the 28th of July or 25th of July. So at that stage, he thought that it might not be capable of recording the 31 days because he knew he'd had it upgraded. Obviously, he provided CCTV before, but those requests had been made within 14 days. So obviously, he provided the CCTV. As to when he checked between then and the second conversation on the 6th of October, certainly prior to his conversation with the PCSO, he'd obviously checked the system and realised it wasn't recording for longer than 14 days. And as I've said in the written representations, he panicked because he accepts, although that condition is badly worded, that the expectation would be it was 31 days. And so that is when he changed his existing system for its capability to record to 31 days. And obviously the picture quality then decreased. And it was on the 11th of August, his conversation with PC Rackham, that he advised PC Rackham, in fact, it only recorded for 14 days, and therefore the incident on the 12th of July he did not have, but did have all the information regarding the member of staff, which he was then contacted the officer in the case after his conversation with PC Rackham. And then the system was upgraded in early October and then again in early November.
Do you have any more questions, Councillor Barrett? No?
No, thank you.
Okay, any questions, Councillor Symes? It's just a couple of questions from me, Mr. Walsgrove. I noticed that you used the comment, it's not unreasonable for Nanda to feel upset about the lack of action that the police have taken, but do you agree that it's part of his licensing condition to assist the police?
Absolutely, and yes, of course it is. And even if it wasn't a condition, he appreciates that in terms of promoting the licensing objectives as a licence holder, that's his obligation, and doesn't for 1 minute suggest that he wouldn't do so in the future. And as you've seen in the written representations, he's tried to show you that he has worked with the police in the past. He thought he had a good relationship. Yes, he expressed his frustration on those 2 occasions, which of course he regrets. He's apologised for. He's just got to keep it tight-lipped, but of course he's got that responsibility and he acknowledges that.
Thank you. Your submission, point 17, it says obviously Nanda wasn't aware of the full allegation, but I'm going to go down to point 18 because I think that's quite an interesting one, where it makes reference to the fact that did not make any effort to contact him on that day or to gather the CCTV. I think if we look actually down into the submission again on the 22nd, obviously many of us coming back in between did try and call Nanda's mobile number, he didn't answer. Would you accept that the police did try to contact Nanda at that point?
I can't dispute whether a telephone call was made. All I can say is that the officer did not leave a voice message saying who she was and for him to call her back.
Okay, I'm just saying, it's in the submission pack, as I'm sure you're aware. Annex D, Police Evidence Danny Marr Review. So if you look at Annex D, and I think it's around 20 lines down, it does make a point where, after she told me when he was coming back, and she said she didn't tell him in between visits to Danny Marr, I had been trying to call Nanda's mobile number, but he would never answer. So there is reference to the fact that the police did try to contact them, but in your submission you're saying that she, on neither occasion did she try to contact Nanda.
So you referenced...
and the point underneath does say there was no voicemail left, and if very rarely ever recognised for an unrecognised number.
Yeah.
But knowing that the police had been into the store...
Well, he didn't know that.
He didn't know because the member of staff hadn't relayed it.
Correct, and that's what the police officer
Thank you.
says.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And we go further on down within the police submission, whereas obviously in the third instance, when Nanda did get the call, there was some notion that the member of staff that was working was the alleged perpetrator. When was Nanda aware that it was the alleged perpetrator, and when did the member of staff leave the business?
He was only advised of the time and the day of that member of staff to whom the incident related. So he then went back and checked who was working on that day at that time. He was only aware of the nature of the allegation in terms of an assault, an alleged assault on a 12-year-old, which is how PC Rackham reports it on the 11th of August. The allegation that photographs were taken was only disclosed to him in the review papers. And it's at that point that he decides to interview that member of staff. Up until that point, and this is why it was important for me to set out the facts as clearly as I possibly could. So up until that point, he had believed that the incident the police were talking about was the one his member of staff had told him about, where they blocked the entrance to the door because they caught someone stealing, a child stealing, and had asked them to put the products back. So in the shop, the entrance door is right next to the counter. So the staff will stand by the counter, can just quickly move out and block the entrance. He had always thought that it was that incident that he'd been told about by his staff that they were referring to. It was only when he got the review papers he realised that, in fact, it wasn't that at all, when we interviewed that particular member of staff about this allegation specifically.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Very clear answer. I have nothing else to add. I just want to say thank you for the additional submission as well. Do you have any questions? PC Vincent.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Walsgrove, you made a very bold statement earlier. You said that whenever Nanda has provided CCTV to police, no action has been taken, but that's simply not true, is it?
Well, certainly the majority of the time. I haven't gone into every single incident with him as to when CCTV has been provided.
So we have several occasions where CCTV is provided. On one incident for robbery, it led to 3.5 years imprisonment for the suspects. There was another incident of stated thefts that police attended and spoke to Nanda and had a conversation with him, and he said he didn't want to progress that matter any further or provide a statement. There was another incident where a man was arrested and charged by police for theft and assault as well. There was another incident of robbery where police conducted a full investigation. The decision to charge not to charge was made by CPS. So I think it's unfair to say that when CCTV is provided that there is no further action taken. I think if anything, it's quite clear action is taken when CCTV is provided.
Well, I think I said successful, and it seems that from that there was one successful prosecution. So I stand corrected that there's one example where positive outcome was achieved. But
PC Vincent, can I just remind you that when you are speaking afterwards, turn your microphone off. Do you have any more questions?
No, just I think there's 3 or 4 incidents, but I don't want to argue. I've got information that Mr. Walsgrove doesn't have access to. It would be unfair of me to continue going through the list of incidents we have. I just wanted to make that point, Chair. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm glad that you wouldn't bring new evidence into proceedings, and I'm sure Mr. Walsgrove would be delighted if you did. So we'll move on. Do we have any more questions from Councillor Madrid?
Sorry, Chair. I've got another question.
Oh, you said you didn't have any more questions?
Sorry, I do apologise.
Oh, okay, carry on.
Thank you. In relation to the new CCTV system that was installed, we're led to believe in July, is that correct?
it wasn't a new CCTV system, it was the existing CCTV system. The memory effectively was changed, so you can change the settings from 14 to 31 days, but that does and did affect the pitch quality. So the first upgrade to the system was in early October. So that provided a bigger hard drive whereby the pitch quality could be evidential pitch quality for 31 days. And then he decided to have a second CCTV install system to the same quality, each running effectively independently off different hard drives, so that if one system wasn't working, the other one should be working, so there would never be any break. Because clearly, if the licence is allowed to continue, he doesn't want to find himself in a situation where there's an argument about how long it took to fix a CCTV system.
Thank you. At any point has your client made contact with the police regarding the upgrading of the system to notify us?
No, he didn't think to, and to be honest, if he'd asked me, I wouldn't have thought there was any reason to either.
Yeah, the reason for the question, and it could be read either way, but Annex 2, Condition 2, the premises licence will come into effect will not come into effect until the CCTV system has been approved by the police.
That's the original system when the licence was granted. It doesn't mean every time he swaps CCTV.
As I say, read either way.
Well, it can't be read either way. That's the way it's read. You can't expect to check CCTV every time it's installed. That once that is checked, the licence comes into effect. It doesn't mean the licence is then defective every time he changes the CCTV. Unfortunately, it's an incredibly poorly drafted condition, and what I've tried not to do is seek an advantage in this committee hearing by referring to it in terms of the breaches. As I said, the condition about capacity, technically, he's not breached that. You wouldn't get a prosecution home in the magistrates' court for him breaching it because his CCTV did have that capacity. But he's agreed, everyone's expectation was he should have had 31 days footage. So he's bold enough to come forward and say, look, I've got that wrong. The system was upgraded. I didn't check it to make sure it would still retain its 31 days, and so therefore I'm really sorry, but I have sorted that out now. And I think that shows, as I said, that positive response to being a responsible licence holder, as opposed to the negative view of, you know, you didn't have the correct system in place. I could have come and argued that, in fact, there haven't been any breaches of the condition other than the one condition around not training his staff to access the system. Now, he accepts entirely that he didn't do that because he doesn't want his staff having access to the system, because actually that's not a good thing, particularly in retail world, for members of staff to be able to access the system, because then they can access it and delete footage. He needs complete control, and that's not unreasonable. Certainly with all of my retail clients, we would never have a condition put on a licence which would give access to the CCTV by members of staff, hence suggesting, in fact, why the new conditions should go on, because it removes that responsibility. I'm reasonably sure, but you will correct me if I'm wrong, the police would probably prefer just him to have access to it rather than every member of staff, but perhaps that's a discussion for another day.
No, thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Thank you.
No, I think there was some good clarity actually regarding the capacity of the system, because the licence does state capacity, it doesn't actually state 31 days. So I think, I appreciate the to and fro there. I think it's given some more clarity to that question. So thank you. Do we have any more questions, PC Vincent?
No, none for me, Chair.
Any questions? Thank you. Councillor Madrick, do you have any questions? I'm sure you don't have any questions, no. We're going to move on to summing up. As the applicant for the review, would you like to sum up?
In summary, the police remain of the opinion that moving forwards, this licence holder should not continue to hold a licence, and we would ask you to look at revocation in the first instance when you're deliberating, due to the multiple Section 136 offences which have clearly occurred during the time that he's been selling alcohol whilst not complying with his condition for the staff training with relation to the CCTV operation. Failing that, should you be persuaded otherwise and the licence stays, we would ask you to look at a suspension and a replacement of the DPS, along with a warning from yourselves that should any further breaches occur, that more robust action will be taken by the committee at that point.
Thank you. The licensing officer, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, thank you.
Tans, do you have anything you wish to add? No. Councillor Madrick?
Only the fact, Chair, that I'd like to clarify that certainly on behalf of myself and Brian Madrick and Councillor Brian Madrick, we wouldn't support a revocation of the licence at all.
Councillor Madrick, I'll just remind you, Councillor Brian Madrick hasn't made any representation, so you're here on your own merit.
I'm here on my own merit, yeah. You know what we're like. Yeah. But as I say, I would echo what the officer just said in regards to removal of DPS, but I equally echo what John Walsgrove said in relation to the fact that there isn't need to suspend it during that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Madrick. I'm going to move on to Mr. Walsgrove. Do you have anything you wish to sum up with?
I'm afraid so, but I will be as brief as I possibly can. Just a few points in summary that I would ask you to take into account. First of all is the previous experience, the fact that he's had licences in 2 shops for 2 decades. Yes, there was the 2016 incident referred to, but over 2 decades, referring back to an incident in 2016 where, again, he wasn't refusing to provide the CCTV and, in fact, did provide the CCTV once PC Rackham had spoken to him. I would say you can give weight to the fact that that's a pretty impressive track record for a licence holder in your city. Secondly, to take into account the previous working in partnership with the police, not just the CCTV, but as I've said, working with the drug unit in relation to an investigation where he worked with them and they carried out surveillance from his home. That does show someone who's committed to working with the police. Thirdly, the extremely positive support he's received from the local community, his local councillor, Councillor Madgwick, for whom we're grateful for the comments that he's put forward. Fourthly, and perhaps more importantly, the positive steps that he has taken since the review has been issued, which I've outlined to you, both in relation to CCTV, providing his contact details so that staff will ensure those business cards are given out with his contact details, and also retraining of his staff to make sure they are to alert him should anybody visit the shop when he's not there, because clearly that member of staff should have told him the police had been in on those occasions that they had. Fifthly, take into account the financial impact of your decision. So in terms of revocation, you've heard from me the explanation that taking away the licence will not just remove alcohol sales, but it will remove a substantial amount of his trade altogether, and thus the loss of the business, which we say is not a proportionate response to the cause of this review. So overall, as I say, you can have confidence in him. You can allow this licence to continue. He is responsible and can continue as the DPS. I do ask you to change the CCTV condition as I've suggested, and I'll pass your legal advisor that the specific wording, although it's the standard Portsmouth City Council wording that you've probably seen many times before, and would ask you then to consider issuing a warning to him regarding his future conduct and working relationship with the police. And the very final point is, in terms of sending a message out to other licence holders, that is not your function, and you should not in any way take into account what message you should be sending to anybody else. You deal with licensing applications on their own merits for the individual licensees, and any decision has no effect on anybody else whatsoever. So issuing a warning and changing the CCTV condition is not sending a message out to everybody else. You don't have to comply with the conditions on your licence because all they're going to do is give you a warning. It doesn't send that message at all. The peculiar circumstances of this case would, in my respectful submission, suggest that a warning is appropriate and is not going to be considered by other licence holders in the city to be a sign of weakness, which I think is the implication that perhaps may have been put forward in the suggestion that you need to take a tough stance to warn everybody else about how they should conduct their premises. I'll leave it there. Thank you, sir. Thank you for listening to Mr. Councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. I'm grateful for the advice at the end, and I think we do look at every application on its own merit, and I think that's the right thing to do. And I think, as someone who's been to this committee a few times now, I think you understand that. So thank you. I mean, just going to go through...
Chair, sorry to interject.
I was literally just about to come to you. If you
okay.
Wish. Sorry, we've jumped the gun, Ben. I was just going to come over. Would you have anything you wish to add?
Yes, it's unusual and completely out of turn for me to interject at this stage, but I just thought it would be worth mentioning the fact that there has been mention of some additional wording or revision of the wording for a condition on the licence relating to the CCTV. I just wanted to ask the police if they've seen the proposed wording that's being put forward, if it does accord with your usual standard wording, and if there's anything you want to say about that now, just in case, without preempting what decision you may or may not make. If you did determine to attach that condition, we wouldn't want there to be any issues merely over the wording of a condition such as this, if it can be avoided by a brief consideration now.
But no, that's fine.
I did lift it off another Portsmouth City Council licence, so I'm assuming it is right. I would like to think it was right.
We live in hope. But no, thanks for that. Just a question. Are you happy with everything that's been said today? I'm just going to go around the room and do you have anything you wish to add, Ben?
Nothing from me, Chair, no.
No, PJ? No?
Nothing from me, Chair, thank you.
Colin?
There will be in relation to the wording of this condition.
Nothing relation?
There is.
There is a relation to the wording of the condition. Okay.
Might I have 30 seconds also?
Yes, fine. I'm just going to go around everyone else while you have your 30 seconds. Councillor Madrick?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
I don't have anything I wish to add. Respectfully, the premises licence holder does have the last word, so I'll wait for Colin to have a look at the thing, and then I'll come back to yourself, Mr. Walsgrove.
Thank you. I was just looking for when the CCTV would be made available to police, but it is up on request, so that's great. We're happy with the wording. Thank you.
Mr. Walsgrove, do you have anything you wish to add, or are you happy with proceedings?
Happy, sir, thank you.
Are you happy with the proceedings today?
Yes.
Good. I always like to check. Thank you. We're just going to go into deliberations now. So I respectfully won't be back till about 5:15 is the time I'm putting on that. I think that's a sufficient amount of time. Are you happy with that as the legal advisor?
Yep, I think that's.
Thank you. Okay.
Reasonable amount
Yeah,
of
we're going to
time.
go into our closed session now. So if everybody would like to vacate and come back around 5:15, if we are any longer, we will let you know. Okay. Thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you. And just to stress, if just by chance any of the parties today happen to bump into the members whilst they're in deliberation, they will ignore you, they will not speak to you, they won't engage in any conversation, and that is relevant to all of you here today, because that's just going to cause further problems. And hopefully we'll have a decision by 5:15, but if not, it may take a bit longer, but you can safely go away and be reassured that the subcommittee is not going to reconvene before 5:15. Thank you.